Welcome back to the Pre-Vetted podcast, where we spotlight extraordinary people and remarkable talent reshaping our world. Today, we're joined by Joe Sanchez, his CEO and founder of 1826, a tour and event production company founded in London in 2007 and now based in Los Angeles. Joe and his team produce major concert tours, live events, and film content, and have worked with artists like Rihanna, Olivia Rodrigo, and Harry Styles, plus brands like Spotify, Nike, and Snapchat. Joe, welcome to the show.
Hey, how's it going, Federico? You good?
I am doing great. I'm honored to have you here today.
Happy to be here.
So, what first pulled you into live event and tour production?
I was always a fan of music. Like when I was a kid growing up, I always loved music. The very first concert I ever went to, 1986, which shows my age, was Queen at Wembley Stadium with Freddie Mercury singing. So it was downhill from there, basically, forevermore. Yeah, so so Queen was my very first ever show I went to as a fan, as a 16-year-old kid. I kind of was into rock music and I was a big fan of rock music. A couple of years, I kind of dropped out of school at like, I don't know, 17 or 18. I met this girl who lived in New Jersey in the USA, in the UK, when I was in the UK. And I was spending the summer of 19 in New Jersey because I didn't have anything else to do. And I was just like goofing around and drinking and hanging out and stuff. And I was a big fan of a British rock band called The Cult, who were on tour that summer opening up for Metallica. And Metallica and The Cult were playing at the local arena in New Jersey, like 2 nights, I think it was. And it was like 5 miles down the road from this girl's house. And I went down there and I didn't have any money and I stood around outside at the top of the ramp, down to the arena, and the Colts tour buses arrived. And I went up to them and I was like, "Hey, I've come all the way from England to see you guys. Like, I'm your biggest fan. Can you get me in for free?" And they were like, "No way, you've come from England to see us." And I was like, yeah. I'd come from 4 miles down the road kind of thing. But so I got it. They got me in, and afterwards I went backstage and was hanging out with them and having some beers and stuff. And I kind of sort of got to know the singer a little bit, who's a guy called Ian Astbury. And the Cult is still going, man. They're still touring all over the world and they're still a successful rock band. And so me and him kind of became buddies. Like 6 months later, they kind of graduated from opening for Metallica in arenas to headlining their own arenas. And they did a 4-month-long arena tour in the US from January to April 19. I was 19 years old. And Ian was like, "Hey, come on tour with us, have a job." So I was the band's personal assistant. So
Wow.
I basically had 3 jobs to do. I used to carry the bags for the band in and out of the arenas. And then the guitar player had a little pit bull terrier on tour. So I was like the dog boy. I used to look after the dog, and like if the dog went to the bathroom inside the building, the tour manager or someone would get me on the radio and say, "Hey, Joe Sanchez, that dog has gone and done some, mess in the corridor, go clean it up." So I'd have to go find a janitor's mop and pick up dog mess and clean it up and walk it. So I was the dog boy. And then my third job was, and bear in mind, this was a different time from today, I was the boy who would go around the concourse of the arenas and look for pretty girls to invite them to come backstage to meet the band after the show. And those were my 3 jobs.
Wow.
Yeah, man. And I did that for 4 months and I got $100 a week.
$100 was worth something, right?
No, when $100 was worth nothing. But I got all the beer I could drink, and it was a blast, man. I used to travel with the band and, go for dinner with Slash and hang out with whoever and do all this crazy cool shit at 19 years old. And then I came home from that and I kind of I started my own band and we never really got anywhere. And I got another job working for a band from Wales called the Manic Street Preachers. I was helping a friend of mine sell their t-shirts. And I did that for a couple of years in the early 90s. And then they kind of got big. They went from being like a kind of a little club band to like playing arenas and even stadiums in the UK and Europe. Their manager started managing other artists. And he came up to me one day and he was like, "Do you want to be a tour manager?" And I was like, "Sure. Yeah. What do I, he's like, he had other artists that he would need just help, like little artists at the time to tour manage. And one of them was Sophie Ellis Bextor, who had a big hit back in like 2000 or whatever. And so I started tour managing her and tour managing some other artists. And I did that for like all of the 90s, really. I just worked as a tour manager, going on the road and running these tours and doing the budgets and, figuring it all out. And then I got to about 2000, about around the millennium, and I kind of decided I'd had enough of dealing with bands and artists and, people complaining about like, the fizzy water was too fizzy and the ham was the wrong ham and just nonsense stuff like that kind of thing. A friend of mine said, "Why don't you be a production manager?" And I was like, "What do I know about being a production manager?" Basically, as tours get bigger, once you get above like theater level and beyond, the tour is run by the tour manager, looks after the artist and the artist needs and things like that, specifically for the artist. And then the production manager looks after the show, the lights and the crew and the video and the trucks and the buses and the power and the stage and the blah, 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 so it's, and I kind of gravitated towards that. Started working as a touring production manager in 2000 for a singer called Lisa Stansfield. And then I got a job after that as the production manager for Pet Shop Boys. And I did that for 8 years, running all of their touring for 8 years. And then I did a bunch of other tours in between here and there and whatever. And then I was production manager for Sarah Brightman, the opera singer, for a year or so. And then what did I do after that? I went to Muscat in Oman for 6 months and I produced Oman National Day in 2010, which was like in the Middle East. It's really popular to have these huge kind of National Day celebrations, like when whatever happened. So it was a $30 million show back then, which was huge in today's money. So I did that for 6 months. And just towards the end of that, I got a call from a guy called Jay Brown, who had just started managing Rihanna. And he was like, "Hey, your name was recommended to me by someone. Could you come and meet Rihanna in Sydney?" So I flew out to Sydney at the end of 2010, maybe. And I met Rihanna briefly and met Jay. And I was hired on the spot to take over as her new production manager. And they'd just come in. This is Jay Brown, who was partners with Jay-Z and those guys from Rock Nation. And they came in and started managing Rihanna. And they fired everyone and brought me in to basically take over running all of her touring. And I did that for 3 years, which was through Loud and 777 and Diamonds. And it was basically the Rihanna's kind of biggest peak, era in stadiums and arenas and all that stuff. I basically ran all of her touring for that whole time. Uh, Towards the end of that time, I kind of knew that I wanted to step off the road, at some point, and I didn't want to be a 65-year-old kind of roadie kind of thing. And I'd met my wife on that tour. She was one of Rihanna's singers, and we were dating while we were on tour and stuff like that. And then the tour finished at the end of 2013 and we settled down in LA and she got pregnant and I started 1826, and the idea was that instead of going on the road and having one tour, I could stay back in LA in an office and have people run tours for me and just oversee them and do 4 or 5 tours at one time and, not have to be on the road and actually make more money. And that was kind of where we started. We started in the spare room of my house in Laurel Canyon with one assistant. And we kind of started there and, kind of worked with various different artists for the first 4 or 5 years and just slowly grew from like 1 employee to 3 to 5 to 8 to 12. And I think by the time we got to the pandemic in 2019, 2020, I guess it was, I had about 18 employees and we were running, a bunch of different tours like Calvin Harris and, I don't know who else we were doing back then, Harry Styles. stuff like that, and
Right.
we'd started to do a handful of events and stuff. And then the pandemic came along and just destroyed our business. And we kind of limped through for 2 years with some US government assistance. They were pretty good at helping companies like mine. They had came up with this program called the SVOG program, which was the Shuttered Venue Operators Grants or something. Anyways, we got some money off the government, and I created an event in partnership with the LA Dodgers, the baseball team at their stadium, called the Dodgers Holiday Festival, and we did that 2 Christmases in a row. And we kind of limped our way through that, and then came out of COVID like 21. And just, from there, we just kind of grew really rapidly, like from 21 through 26, we went from like 5 or 6 employees that I had left after COVID to like 55 or so we have now. We started our own design studio 3 years ago, started a experiential creative agency, which, produces events for people like Formula One and Airbnb and those kind of companies. We started our own travel agency. I don't know what else we did. We opened an office in the UK in 24. Yeah, and here we are. Kind of, life just sort of leads you where it leads you. And here we are today with 55 plus. Actually, we'll probably be 60 full-time employees within the next sort of month or so. It's a bootstrap company that just kind of every you keep putting your foot in front of the other, and I made as many mistakes as I had successes. And, you just hopefully at the end of the day make more right decisions than bad decisions. And I guess that's what happened for me.
Amazing. Amazing. That's very interesting. I mean, as a 19-year-old, I can see that a couple of bucks and
Man, that was blast.
unlimited beer is a blast.
Man, that
It's
was
a
the
dream.
guy.
Yeah.
My only downfall is that at 19, I was kind of shy around girls. Otherwise, it could have been real fun. The guys in the band, I used to scoop up 40 girls and put them in a room. And the guys in the band would go and meet them and, hang out and stuff. But not me. I was too shy. But there you go. You live and
Very
learn.
interesting.
Yeah, man.
And congratulations on starting a family, given the, how the world is getting more and more challenging.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a 10-year-old and it's, yeah,
A boy or a girl?
a boy. Yeah.
I have an 11-year-old daughter and a 5-year-old boy.
Oh, congratulations.
Yeah. Yeah.
They grow so fast that, you have to be there to be with them.
Yeah. And that was it, kind of like I never really wanted kids. And then I met my wife, and she was like, within weeks of us getting together, she was like, I'm having a family kind of thing. So you're either into this or you're not. And I kind of came around, I was like, yeah. Until we had our daughter. Yeah, she was born in 2014. And she's 11 now, and she's a singer herself and a performer. She is, she writes songs and she plays piano, and she's an artist, and she's already performed at Coachella Festival. We've worked with Tyler, the Creator, for the last 8 years, producing all of his live shows and tours and events. In 2024, Tyler was headlining Coachella, the main stage. It was, a huge show. And he's a great guy to work with, but he's also very, crazy artistic, ideas come to him. And about
Yeah.
a month before the show, he comes to me and he's like, Joe, you need to get me a goat. And I was like, what do you mean a goat? And he was like, a goat. I need a goat on stage, because we built this big set that was supposed to be like this desert rocks stuff. And he had this idea that a goat was going to come out and headbutt him off the back of the stage into this big ball pit that he would fall like 15 foot into. And so I phoned up Coachella and I was like, hey, Tyler wants a goat. And I literally, the main guy at Coachella got on the phone to me and he was like, we love Tyler and we love you, but tell Tyler to go F himself. He can't have a go. And so I went back to Tyler and I was like, hey, T, They're saying, no, go, buddy. And he pulled up something on his phone that he'd seen Drake had got on tour. And it was like one of the roadies dressed up as a dog in like a dog costume or something. And like, it was like part of Drake's show was one of the crew was dressed as like a dog. And he said, man, what's Drake doing here? And I was like, it looks like it's a little dude in a costume and stuff. And so I started trying to figure out, but we have this company that builds puppets and costumes and stuff for us. And so we started talking to him, and we were like, I was originally looking to hire like a little person to be inside the costume to play the goat. But
Right.
the goats are quite small bodies and they have really long, thin legs. And little people are quite well proportioned. They're quite big and they have quite short arms. And so I went home from work one day, like in like February or whatever, like at 24. And I walked in the door and I saw my daughter, who was then, oh, was she then 9 years old. And she's all skinny and tall or whatever. And she's a performer anyway. And I was just like, hey, how would you like to perform on stage with Tyler headlining Coachella this year, dressed as a goat? And she was like, yeah, the kind of thing. And so we built this costume, this custom goat costume, though, like kind of all these like sort of like funny stick things, which the hooves and stuff, and it covered her whole head with this big kind of thing. And she came to rehearsals and practiced with Tyler, this whole bit of the show where she kind of comes out from behind the rocks and headbutts him off the back of the stage. She did, so Coachella is two Saturdays, it's 2 weekends together every year. So she came out to Coachella twice and performed in front of 80,000 people, headbutting Tyler off the stage dressed as a goat. So she got some pretty good bragging rights at school. And I got paid. She got some money. She still got the money in the bank from being the goat.
Amazing.
Yeah, man, even better.
Right. Right. And that gives her a lot of, curriculum to have
Yeah, I'm
an
like,
artistic career.
yeah. 5 years from now, I'm just going to be sitting back, hopefully managing her career as she becomes the next Billie Eilish or something. That's the plan. Well, you never know. Maybe she'd be a marine biologist or something sensible.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I, I, I do the same thing with my son. I'm like, well, he could go to this university, he could do this, but at the end of it, I'm thinking, well, it's his choice. So uh, you
Yeah,
you
man.
you put
Life
everything, and
just
then they make decisions. Yeah.
I get asked so many times, like, oh, you built this company that's, we grossed like $40 million last year. You know what I mean? Like, and it's like I look back at it and I'm like, how the hell did that happen? You know what I mean? Like, and people are like, how did you do how you become so successful and how did you get to where you are in life? And I'm like, I don't know. I just kind of got up and put one foot in front of the other every day. And I think I had the balls to see when I saw an opportunity, I had the balls to stick my foot in the door and just go, if someone said to me, hey, can you do this? I'd be like, yep. And then I'd go figure out how to do it kind of thing.
Right.
And I guess I had that entrepreneurial spirit where it was like, if we didn't have it or we couldn't do it, I'd just say yes anyway. And then we'd go figure out how to do it. And even, as recently as like 2 years ago, just over 2 years ago, uh, we got approached by Formula One, and they had actually a company. They'd hired a company to produce the Las Vegas Grand Prix opening and closing uh, performances for 23, 2023, and that this company had gotten fired or something had happened, and they approached me in like June, and they were like, hey, we have this, big, like multi-million-dollar event, and we need producer, and the company could come in and produce it. Could you do it? And we'd never done anything at that scale before. And, but I was just like, oh yeah, of course, absolutely. And we went in and we hired a bunch of people and we killed it and we did a great job. And Formula One have hired us a number of other times since then. And we sort of have kind of become their sort of de facto experiential agency for their promotional events and for the Las Vegas Grand Prix. this time last year, we produced a big event in London at the O2 for them called F5, which was their launch for all of the new teams, car designs and all the drivers and stuff. And it was, again, a multi-million dollar show that was live broadcast, televised. And, we produced all of that side of it, and then, so again, that sort of, I guess there's sort of like in my career, when I think back, there's been 2 or 3 kind of turning points that kind of like put you on another level kind of thing. And I think, one of the first ones for me was really becoming Rihanna's production guy, and then her becoming the biggest artist on the planet, at the time kind of thing. And that moved me from being like this kind of like B-level kind of guy in the UK to being one of the top few guys in the world doing that kind of job. And then, I set up my company right off the back of my success with Rihanna. And then really the next big kind of pivot for me was picking up Formula One as a client. And then a lot of other corporate clients have kind of come to us seeing the kind of work we do with Formula One at the level we deliver it at. And I think that sort of helped us sort of pivot into this experiential business that now is 50% of our income is experiential events. And I think that's kind of, it's always interesting that there's like these pivot points in your life where something could go one way or something could go another way, but none of it was ever really planned. It was just kind of just things worked out, and I saw opportunities and always said yes. I kind of like,
Organically, you develop new businesses based on the opportunities you see coming.
yeah, and we've continued to do that. As we've grown the company, we've kind of grown. Like I guess I learned 2 or 3 years ago was like, let's not leave money on the table unless it's either too complicated or risky or too expensive to do it. So we started our own travel agency that's dedicated on concert touring and events travel, which is very different from like, the travel agent that would, you go book your vacation with or whatever. And I partnered with the friends of mine who have a company called Alias, which is part of Pro Travel International, which is one of the biggest event and touring travel agencies in the world. So, it's like we have our own travel agency, so we keep that business in-house. I started a rigging company a year ago, just on a small scale with like $1.5 million investment. So, and rigging is the chain motors and the truss and the hoists and stuff to support all the lights and video and sound in an arena or whatever. And
Right.
so we put that system to work on Tyler, the Creator's 105-day world tour last year, so, and that'll go and do Ariana Grande's tour this year. So, it'll only need to do 3 or 4 tours and it will have paid for itself. And that equipment lasts for 30 years. So, and each year we'll add another 100 motors and slowly grow it organically, as part of a kind of like a side business kind of thing. And
Right.
the same with our design studio, as we started getting into the experiential work, people were coming to us and saying, oh, you design shows as well. You do all your own design. And before then, we'd always kind of partnered with other design people. And I started our studio just over 3 years ago with an old friend of mine, a guy called Rob Sinclair. Rob actually I hired him in 2004 or 5 on the Pet Shop Boys as their lighting designer. So we go back to when we used to go on tour together. And kind of over the last 3 years, me and Rob have grown the studio from just him to now we have, I think, 8 or 9 full-time employees with designers and rendering staff and drafting people and, GM and head of the studio and operational and all that kind of stuff. And we're designing so many shows now. Rob is now one of the top 5 set and lighting designers in the world for concert touring. He's so in demand. He's booked up till November kind of thing, So, and we've grown the studio in his way kind of as part of that, So we have all these different sort of areas of the business that we're sort of focusing our growth on. We do set storage for all our clients and stuff like that now. So we have a giant warehouse up in just outside LA, north of LA, with about 50,000 square foot of storage, and we store all these old sets for Calvin Harris and Tyler the Creator and Rihanna stuff and whoever's up there, and a lot of these artists that they'll use a set or a prop, for a period of time, and then they want to keep it. So we store it for them, and that's another income stream as well.
Wow, amazing. Yes, because that way you have less dependency of other vendors that could, they could deliver a super uh, work, which would affect your reputation with the client, right?
Yeah,
But
it's just it's kind of like we don't want to overstretch, and there's been a couple of ideas that I've had which, we now have a company with structure. I never went to business school. I didn't know anything about running a business. I learned everything by just making mistakes of not, or, succeeding or failing and stuff. And, but then now we're at the stage where we have, almost 60 employees. So in the last year or so, we have a COO, we have a CFO, we have a president, and then we have department heads underneath them. We have 4 or 5 department heads. So we have like this real structure, and, operations and accounting, all that's in house. And there isn't really, people say to me, oh, who's your nearest, who do you compete with? Who's your competitor? And there's a lot of experiential agencies that do work for corporate, for companies. So there's tons of them. And we're still quite new in that world. But in terms of concert touring, doing what we do, there really isn't anyone else. Like certainly not at the scale that we do the kind of business at. There's a number of companies where there's 2 or 3 guys, working out of the house or something, or there's one company in LA that kind of does what we do, but they're more focused on design. They don't really do that much tour work and design. They'll design the tour, but we don't just design it. We'll also take the tour out on the road and staff it and run the whole tour and produce the whole thing and put all the crew on it and deliver everything all the way through to the final, P&L that we deliver to the artist, business manager or manager. And there really isn't anyone else, certainly not at our level that I'm aware of in the world, that it kind of is like, does the same as us, which is kind of weird. And it wasn't necessarily by design. It was just kind of happened that way, you know?
right, because they will need to have all your experience and all the services that you're integrating,
Yeah.
which make it
Yeah.
harder to find.
Yeah. And we kind of we're at the point now where we're kind of big enough and successful enough where we can be a little bit picky and choosy about who we work with. And I kind of told a few managers and stuff and people that we've met along the way that we're like the Mercedes or the BMW dealership of concert touring or, whatever. We're not cheap, but we're really good. And we put the kind of care and attention to detail and things like that we put into everything we do. Other people, if it was an individual tour or production manager, or if it was a smaller company, they wouldn't be able to do that. And it's like, well, if you don't want to buy yourself a BMW or a Mercedes, or you don't have the money, well, you can go down the road and buy yourself a Honda for, $8,000 or whatever. You know what I mean? Like you pay for what you get in life. We just proved it on Sunday here. We produced Tyler the Creator's performance at the Grammy Awards.
Right.
And if any of your listeners want to check out something insane, go Google Tyler the Creator at the Grammys 2026. It was, the most complicated, sane, awards show performance that not only I think I've ever done, but I think I've ever seen. It was basically like shooting a music video for a 5-minute long song, but performed completely fully live. And you can't stop and try again, or, it's like there's a live audience, it's broadcast live, and there's so many different beats and, props that we made, I made him a life-size replica Ferrari F40 that could drive itself in 9 days, And
Wow.
yeah, I mean, and it's like, it was back, it was the set company that we have a long relationship with. And I literally called the owner up and I was like, you got to do this,
Yeah.
and it's because I have a relationship and put that much business his way. He dropped everything and he put his whole staff on building this car for me. And, you guys can go watch the video. It looks just, and Tyler, of course, has a real F40 that he bought last year for like, whatever, millions or whatever. And it looks exactly like the real thing. It's just based on an electric go-kart.
Right.
It's a golf buggy, electric golf buggy.
Just for the
So it's
concert.
just for the awards show performance.
Wow.
So, and then we have we built this big gas station set that explodes at the end of the show, and we have all these extras, and it's like I don't think anyone else could have done that. Not in the time scale we had. It's quite a unique niche kind of business, I guess.
Yeah, I think that you don't need a business degree in order to solve people's problems, figure out what the problems they
Yeah,
have, being able to
yeah.
solve those problems, provide that service, and start generating revenue with that.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, as I said, I think I dropped out of school when I was 17 or 18, and I was just self-taught after that. I learned by my own mistakes and by watching other people, and I had a couple of mentors along the way that kind of like helped steer me, a little bit, um, and I learned business just by trial and error, kind of thing.
Right.
And it's strange in the last year or two, I've sort of kind of really transitioned from being like a production kind of hands-on kind of guy that ran the company in a very hands-on way to being a CEO and I have a crazy idea and I call my president in to see me and I say, hey, I think we should do this. And he looks at me like I'm crazy. And then he goes and figures it out, and it's like, I listened to a few kind of like audiobooks and stuff, and and I learned a little bit about company structures and stuff.
Right.
But I'm certainly no expert on that. But I think I've always been good at having good people around me. Like you gotta have. If you don't know something, you gotta have people who really know their shit, and you can turn to and go, what do we do here? Kind of thing. And I've never been too proud to be like, I don't know the answer, but I'm going to ask him and I'll be right back. And then, you know what I mean? And that's that. And I think that, and the other thing I think is part of our success is it's kind of like and it's really like a kind of core belief in life, right? It's like, it's karma, treat people how you want to be treated yourself, like all the people that work here feel like it's family, like all of the freelancers we use, which there's hundreds of them, we treat them great. We pay them before we get paid. We pay our bills straight away on time. We never screw anyone around for money or anything like that. If I said, I'm going to pay this guy $500,000 and we're going to pay it, kind of thing. And we go into all of our projects with all of these artists and these companies with the same hope that we'll be treated the same way. There's only really been 3 occasions that over all the years that it hasn't happened that way. And I took two different people to court. One court case, one is still ongoing. And then I had a money lender get me my money back off this other guy. And no, and it was like stupid sums of money, like 30 grand here or 60 grand there. It wasn't about like the money. It's just about the principle that they owed us the money, So, I kind of always approached work and my personal life, I think, in that sort of way of try and put yourself in other people's shoes and think about how it feel for them and try and take that into account, I guess.
Right.
Something like that.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, I think that, the idea of a company is to generate revenue and become profitable, but I think that is compatible with having a social purpose within the company, which means that you're not just doing things for a profit.
Yeah.
above everything else, right? Because when I have the company meetings with my employees, and we have people that has been with us for 7, 8 years,
Mm.
you know, I appreciate they stay with us. I appreciate how much we change their life through our company, right? There is a synergy, the motivation to keep going, right? To saying, well, what we're doing has an impact on their families, right?
Yeah, man. I'm exactly the same. I not only support my family and extended family, but everyone who works for me, I'm kind of effectively supporting their families as well by employing them and paying these guys a good salary. And all of our full time employees have a gold PPO health care, which no one does here in this industry, and they get 401ks. After a year, we do all that kind of stuff. I like to think that, all of certainly our senior management team, that they get paid well enough that they can afford to buy houses in LA and have nice cars. Work hard and you get rewarded. And I've always believed in that. If we will bonus out or commission staff that bring projects to us that we make good money on, and we encourage everyone to be creative in their thinking. Like if they succeed, we succeed. That's kind of how I've always looked at it.
Right. Yeah, for me, when one of my employees buy a car or a house, I feel proud of what we
Yeah,
accomplished
yeah,
together, right?
yeah, man.
Or when they decide to have a kid, or or they travel to another country. We had employees that never travel outside the country, and they were able to travel, to fly in a plane for the first time with us, right?
Yeah,
So for me, that is I'm proud of that, because we are part of their journey, part of their life. Hopefully for a long time, but at least for a little bit, we support them, give them lots of growth opportunities. And every once in a while we have, different situations with bad employees or whatever. And that, takes me down, kind of rethinking why we're doing what we're doing, right? And then when I see great employees, people that are committed, that are, you know, helping the company move forward, I realize, well, that's why, right? That's why we're doing what we're doing, right? And then
yeah.
every sacrifice makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. It's true, man. Like, I kind of feel the same as you. And like a lot of people who work here have been here. My CFO has been with me 10 years. The company's only been going 12 years. Like
Right,
we've got other guys who've been here 8, 9 years. Like they date back to some of our earliest employees, and people don't tend to leave, like every now and again they'll move on or whatever. But most of the time they kind of stick around. And I think we created a pretty good culture here where, my door's always open to anyone from like, the receptionist to whoever. Um, yeah. And I don't know, like, as I said, like, I think if I'd gone to some sort of business school or if I'd had some sort of education in, um, any kind of business type thing, maybe I'd have done things very differently and things would have turned out very differently. But I'm pretty happy about how things worked out. And there's a couple of little things I'd change along the way or silly mistakes I made that I wish I hadn't made or things or whatever. But otherwise, I don't really have any regrets about any of it. And I wouldn't really change anything that I've done. And I think that, our plan is just to keep organically growing over the next decade or 2 decades and without trying to force it, without, taking on a huge, 10 million, $15 million like investment or something like that, which I've been offered a number of times and I've turned down. I'm like, nah, I'll just do it organically. When we can afford to do that, we'll do that. If we need to borrow $1 million to buy some equipment for the rigging company, yeah, we'll do that, of course. But like, I'm not gonna,
right,
you know, sell equity, and I have no interest in selling my company. At the moment, 20 years maybe down the line, who knows? But like, I'm not building it to sell it. I'm building it because,
for the
uh,
people.
and for me, for the challenge, like I kind of like, I would hope and I would think that, 10 years from now, we'll have like 300 employees or something and have offices, in Korea. Actually, I'm already thinking about opening an office in South Korea, I'm thinking about opening an office in Ibiza. We have a lot of our artists do big residencies every summer in Ibiza, and I like spending time there. Calvin Harris is there every summer. Swedish House Mafia, they're there every summer. Charlie XCX. A lot of these artists that we do, they're there. And I think Calvin has 30 something shows there now this summer. He plays at Ushuaia, which is the biggest outdoor club in Ibiza as a residency. And he's
Right.
doing Tuesdays and Fridays all through the summer. So it's a good excuse for me to go and spend a few weeks there, like make up an excuse. So I got to go kind of thing and just hang out there, go to the beach and have a few
Right.
beers and stuff.
I was going to say, if you need anybody to, take care of Ibiza's office, let me know, right?
You know what, man? You know what? Sooner or later, we'll open one there. So, I mean, I've always enjoyed going there, and I've been there spent many summers there, and it's not slowing down. It's getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. So, it's interesting, like when having the kind of artists that we have and that we represent and we design and that we produce, like Tyler or Calvin or Ariana Grande or Post Malone or My Chemical Romance or Rosalia or whoever, all of these artists that we have, it makes us look sexy compared to competitors in the more corporate kind of world that don't have these kind of artists that they do. That they look at our Instagram and our website and stuff, and it's like, damn, those are the guys that did so and so, and they did Rihanna for 3.5 years, and that kind of stuff. And I think that I'm not saying it's a deciding reason why we pick up certain clients, but it definitely is part of it. I mean, we picked up Airbnb as a client last year. We were
Wow.
producing Charlie XCX's tour, and someone from Airbnb was at one of the Charlie XCX shows and just loved it and tracked us down through our Instagram and then found our way to our website. And there's like a, info at kind of click button, and they clicked it, and all the info at emails come to me. And it was like, hey, I'm so-and-so from Airbnb, and I'd love to connect with you to talk about work. And I was like, yeah, all right, bullshit. This is just some scam or something. And I forwarded it on to our head of our experiential department, who kind of tracked this person down and did some research, and it was a real person from Airbnb. And we connected, and we did 2 projects for them last year. One in Seoul in South Korea that lasted for 2 months. We built a museum from that there. And then we did another experiential thing for them with Patrick Mahomes, who's the famous American football player. So it was like totally random, just like came from them seeing Charlie XCX's tour and, thinking, shit, we want to work with those guys. It's funny how it just falls together sometimes.
Yeah, I mean that I can imagine that once you build a reputation of being a trustworthy vendor, you can solve their issues, their problems. Then it becomes easier to get the next client, the next project, because now you have all that
Yeah.
branding that you've been working through the years.
It's like we don't have business development person like work just kind of, like it just comes to us, like the majority of work, really comes to either me or my partner, Rob Sinclair, directly. Like often it's a call or a text on our cell phone.
Right.
Even Formula One, like someone tracked me down and text my phone, hey, you got a minute? Kind of thing. It's not like we have this like big business development team that do all this, go to conferences and stuff. And yeah, it's people see stuff we do and go, damn, that's cool. How can we have them help us? And I guess that's just how it works, so
That's
yeah.
amazing. That's great. Yeah, I mean it sounds easy. When you say it, it sounds easy, but it's really, really hard to get there. So congratulations. That's a great
Yeah,
achievement.
I mean, like I've basically been in this, in the music business for 36 years this year. 36 years ago now I was picking up dog shit. I literally was cleaning up after that damn dog. And here we are 36 years later. And I kind of run the biggest company in this space. really in the world. And it's kind of crazy to think that, like, I don't know, it's just,
But
it's strange.
the way that I see it is you're solving problems, you know,
Yeah, we're problem solvers.
even if it's a small thing as, picking up dogs a mess,
It's
right?
still solving a problem, right?
But it's
Someone's
solving
got to,
problems. Yes,
yeah,
somebody has
yeah.
to do it, right? Making sure that that happens. And then from there, you can build a relationship, you can find other opportunities, and you can keep growing, which is, it's the same ethos, right? It's the same
It's the same, yeah. I mean,
philosophy.
like, literally just before we started chatting, I was on an hour and a half long Zoom with our technical team and Rob, my partner, who is designing Ariana Grande's tour this summer, and we're producing it. So the company is doing all the production and the technical stuff and staffing it and the financial stuff, but we're also designing it. And so we're on a call for an hour and a half trying to work out the mass technicality of what this tour is going to be, and the scale of it. And Tyler's tour last year was 23 trucks, semis in America.
Wow.
Hers is going to be even bigger. And the amount of complexity and man hours and technical and experience and dedication and thought that goes into that to make it happen uh, in a vaguely cost effective way, in that the artist makes a profit, but also in a safe way that no one gets hurt. And also in a way where night after night, you can recreate the same show without technical errors or faults. We had 105 shows last year with Tyler, and we didn't have a single major mechanical fault or error during any of the shows.
Wow.
And that's us working with like the top class vendors and stage builders and video companies and all that kind of stuff, and us supplying the A-level crew that we have our access to make sure that night after night the shows are seamless. And again, that's like comes back to that kind of Mercedes dealership thing. It's like, you want a Mercedes, it's probably going to cost you 100 grand, but it's going to run and it's not going to break down, and it's going to be, you want a Honda, you can buy one for $8,000 or whatever, but it might break down every day, or whatever. It's not going to have the same AC, and it's not going to have the same sound system, and the seats won't go back, and you know what I mean. So you pay for what you get,
Yeah.
but
But think of how many people would have said no to, picking up dog poop, right? How many,
yeah, man.
and what
It's
you're
terrific.
doing, you
Yeah.
know, it's it's all these problems that you're talking about are messy, right? So it's easy to
Yeah.
say, I can do it, I give up, right? But you're there with your team. Your team is there just,
Yeah.
following through,
Yeah.
making sure that things happen. And
Yeah.
that's why
Yeah,
I'm saying that it's
exactly.
the same, philosophy.
Yeah. Yeah. And I, as we've grown, like 5, 6, 7 years ago, I was very personally involved with all of the tours and shows we did, and, had personal relationships with the artists that we work with. Really, these days, there's only 2 artists that out of our whole, roster of artists that we work with that have a personal relationship with, and I'm still really directly involved in, which is Tyler, the creator, and Calvin Harris. And Tyler, we've done for 8 years, and Calvin, we've done for 11 years. Tyler texts me, hey, we want this or whatever. Adam Calvin emailed me this morning to set up a call to talk about his shows this summer. And those are the only 2 that I'm really directly involved with. And I'll be, a number of their shows. Like I was saying, I'll be coming down to South America with Tyler in March. So I'll be in Guadalajara. But Ariana, I'll just go to the first 2 or 3 shows and the last few days of rehearsals, and make sure that it's all cool, and that our production team and design teams are doing what they're supposed to be, and her management's happy and she's happy, and that the tour's running smoothly, and then I'll be back in the office, So, and really with just Tyler and Calvin, it's just, 10 years of being around. It's trust, and you get to know someone, they get to know you and trust you, and they want you there, and that's fine, But yeah, it's crazy.
Yes, yes. But amazing. I think it's an amazing journey and very inspiring.
Yeah. yeah, I every now and again, I kind of take a second to stop and think about it, and I'm like, yeah, that is quite a story, I guess. Um, it's not the most common one, that's for sure.
Yes, that's why we're talking with extraordinary people like you.
Yeah, that's cool.
So we're running out of time. Any final remarks before we wrap it up? We learned a lot, and I truly appreciated you having here today.
No, no, I don't know. I'll see you in Guadalajara for a beer.
We'll meet you here. I mean, it's going to be a
I'll
blast
be
to have you
there.
here. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I'll be there. You just hit me up. You got my email. Just if you and some friends want to come to the show, come on down and we'll get you in and take care of you and have you see the show and say hi.
Yeah, that'll be amazing. And I can take you places. We can do something fun together with
Yeah,
you,
man.
with Tyler. Happy to take you around. Right.
I
Yeah.
think we get in the night before from Monterey, and then we're in Guadalajara for 2 nights, and then we leave to go to Puerto Rico for the last night of the South American run. So it's kind of in and out, but that's always been the way with touring. So it is funny. This is the first time I've really been on the road in I don't know 10 years or something.
So it's
But
special.
yeah, kind of yeah. But it's a little bit, but it's good. It's good to kind of remind yourself of what really happens.
Right. Right. Amazing. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, man. Be good to see you.
Sounds good. Thank you, Joe.
Yeah, thank you.